Baldur's Gate 3 is packed full of secret interactions, but the most hidden of these are locked behind backup situations. Whether it's by intentionally losing a fight, killing key characters, or failing quests, you'll be surprised at the lengths these developers went for the world to feel natural. So join me today while we take a look at 5 backup scenarios the BG3 devs created for less than 1% of its players. Let's first see how losing a fight can lead to a rarely seen interaction. During Act 1, you'll have the opportunity to board a Dwegar vessel and sail across the Underdark's murky waters towards Grimforge. Along the way, several dwarves will stop you mid-journey to ask where the boat's original owner is. If you choose to refuse that answer and instead engage in combat, then you'll get to experience a battle in a one-time visitable location on the open sea. Unlike most encounters, shoving enemies into the water here will not delete their loot, as their bodies will wash up on shore back near the beach. Most players probably did know all this, but I bet what you've never tried is boarding the boat without your full party being present and then losing the encounter. Let's take a look at what happens in that unlikely scenario. First thing that you can notice is if you visit the village while the other party members are sailing, the boat is not actually here, which is interesting that somebody thought of that. Now let's intentionally lose the battle on the boat with our remaining team. As the last character falls, the screen goes black, and you'll load to see that your corpses have washed up on shore in the same section of the beach that the enemies could have been found in had they fallen in the water instead. This is meant to give you a way to revive your fallen party members if for some reason you didn't have withers by this point in the story. Additionally, in the fishing village, you'll see that the boat is once again docked. Only now, the enemy Dwegar from that last encounter have completed their journey to come and check on the well-being of the ship's owner. There's no unique dialogue or anything here, as they still remember your prior transgressions, but it is a nice bit of world building that they really did come to check when you didn't explain where Gek is. At the same time, their arrival solves the problem of a player potentially no longer having a way to sail to Grimforge. Overall, a very clever solution to an issue that almost no one would ever face. This next solution can best be described as the developers intentionally wanting to create extra work for themselves, as it proves completing or failing a quest will sometimes have nearly unnoticeable consequences. In Act 1, once Minthara has been made aware of the location of the Emerald Grove, the entire refuge will switch to a battle-ready state, causing nearly all inhabitants within to move to a different location. At this time, the Tiefling children will be hiding in their underground cave with Alfira there to watch over their safety. To keep the children distracted, she's busy telling the story of how Baldur's Gate got its name.
He drove the raiders away and raised a wall to protect his people. And so they named the city to honor him. Baldurans, Baldur's Gate.
And if spoken with, will urge the player to go help defeat the goblins. Larian choosing Alfira to be here does make a lot of sense lore-wise, but as many of you are probably aware, this bard dies much more frequently than most of the other tieflings. In the event that Alfira was killed before the raid on the Grove setup occurs, the developers have come up with a backup NPC, the tiefling child, Murkon. This is the same child that you need to rescue from the Harpies, and she'll be telling the other children the story of that near-death encounter.
And when I looked up, there was a harpy, ready to tear me to shreds!
What's kind of funny here is that all of the other children will have the exact same voice lines they would have had if Alfira was present, because they're still listening to someone telling a story. Yet again though, in classic Larian fashion, the backup that they selected is a tiefling who frequently dies before this occurs, meaning there is a third scenario. In the case that both Alfira and Murkon did not survive, then once again the kids will be sitting down here, only this time there is no story, and all the kids will have different voice lines urging you to go and help defeat the goblins. Really makes you wonder why they created 3 separate scenarios when one of these would have covered it for something that barely anyone would ever notice. But hey, I guess that's just another reason why we love the game. This third type of backup scenario occurs when a key character died mid-battle, then afterwards someone seemingly related shows up to deliver some narrative. The thing about this type though, is that unless you're paying very close attention, you might not realize something abnormal even happened at all. I'll share 2 examples of this, and you let me know if you realize that these are backups in your playthroughs. The first example takes place in Grimforge, where the players will have the opportunity to come across a trapped true soul near behind a pile of rubble. You're initially given the quest to free him, but if you talk to the Dwegar before doing this, you'll find that some of them are very upset with Nier, and plan to kill him to cover their unpaid dues. You can even agree to side with them in attacking Nier for the gold once he's broke free. During this encounter though, there's a chance that your newly made dwarven ally doesn't survive. In most games, that would just mean that you failed the quest, but in Baldur's Gate 3, there is a dwarf that shows up just to cover that scenario. Many people who had that occur probably thought that this guy is just another Dwegar from elsewhere in the zone, but if you try to search around, you will never find Kurgrath unless Elder Brithvar has died in battle against Nier. He strolls in naturally afterwards to split the gold as agreed, give a bit of narrative about Moonrise, and let the players have a chance to free the gnome slaves via dialogue. Once the conversation ends, he'll run off, teleporting out of the world forever. One more minor detail for this guy is if you stole the gold immediately before the conversation, situation, he has a comment that his pockets were picked.
My pocket's been picked. Try the cadavers. Probably loaded with loot.
That isn't the only encounter where Larian has a seemingly associated NPC show up afterwards to get across some narrative. In the Baldur's Gate Park, you can meet Manip Ednosa, a guard who almost appears nervous to be in the area. Speaking with her will reveal she is infected with a parasite much like yourself, and will have her suggesting you should leave the park to not interfere with nearby absolute business. Ignoring her to further explore the park will lead to the discovery of several poorly disguised Ball assassins who are planning to massacre the nearby civilians. You can potentially ignore their slaughter if you've agreed to help Orin kill Gortash, but if not, they will immediately test you in battle after talking. On the second turn of this encounter, that same infected guard from earlier will rush in to join the fray. They know she's an absolutist, but she decides to go against the cult, choosing to side with the city guard in stopping these murders. If you're able to slay the Ballis before the guard is slain, she'll speak with you after the encounter. Only it's not really her that you're speaking with.
You know us. Absolute will. Absolute power.
You're speaking directly with the Elder Brain who is operating her body like a puppet, demanding the player slay both Orin and Gortash to aid the brain. Once the conversation ends, the guard will immediately die. This is one of very few times the brain speaks to you directly in the game, thus a pretty important bit of story the devs didn't want you to potentially miss out on. So in the event that Manip was slain before the cultists have been, after the battle, a new guard shows up as a backup to deliver that same bit of narrative. Fistgriff has very little different in terms of lines spoken, but she does deliver them in a much more psychotic way.
Necromancer, dead. Changeling and tyrant remain. At odds. Kill them.
As it is again the brain in control of the body, she seemingly doesn't even know how to stand like a normal person. What I love about this failsafe is that it's so natural that players who found either one likely thought they experienced the only possible outcome. The narrator acting as the backup is certainly not common, but then again nothing about the Iron Throne is very run-of-the-mill. Much like the earlier boat encounter, this is a one-time visitable location where the player boards a submersible to find Gortash's secret underwater prison. Down here there's about a dozen Gondian prisoners in need of rescue. However, one of them is nearly always going to survive the encounter, Obelia Tubin. As soon as you've docked to begin the encounter, she'll already be outside of her cell, just one turn away from freedom. This is because after your escape, Miss Tubin is the one who delivers the dialogue that explains what happened here, and where the player should be going next to continue the questline. Her already being ready to escape covers almost all scenarios, as every normal player at the bare minimum would have saved Obelia unless they were doing some sort of murder hobo run where they would instead save no one. So what if you saved all the Gondians except for Miss Tubin? Well, I quickly guaranteed her death, saved the others, and then took the escape. And this time no one is standing up asking to speak in her place. But if you click on any of the Gondians who did survive, you'll get a short dialogue from the narrator explaining what that person is telling you.
Still shaken, they approach you. They thank you for rescuing them, but ask for you to perform one last miracle. If you free their families trapped at the Steelwatch Foundry, they promise you aid in your battle against the Absolute.
This piece of dialogue is one of the only times in the game the narrator explains what someone else told you. In fact, I can't even think of another one off the top of my head. But if you can, let me know in the comments. Another cool little detail here is that the Gondians will comment on each other's deaths.
Shit! She's dead.
With all the chaos that's normally going on during the fight, it's something that I hadn't noticed until making this video, with some of the characters' polar opposite reactions to each other's deaths being somewhat comical.
I will tell your story, Santoria. Findo Ventimere will live on!
Is he? Yeah, dead. No use waiting about.
Much like the earlier boat encounter, if your characters have died inside the Iron Throne, or the Gondians do, then some of the corpses will wash up on the shore afterwards depending on who didn't make it out. Another fun fact about the Iron Throne that I've never seen anyone share is if you wanted to see things down here without being in combat, you can jump right through the submersible's roof using Enhanced Sleep, Featherfall, and a crate. This will skip the Iron Throne's battle trigger until you've clicked the ladder, giving you unlimited time to explore the region at your heart's content. Obelia, for some reason, even has a unique dialogue where she asks you to ignore Gortash and help them escape.
Please, whatever orders Gortash gave you, once the roof collapses, we'll all drown, including you.
Since you're supposed to be in combat 100% of the time while you're inside the Iron Throne, I have no idea how this dialogue would ever trigger outside of using this exploit. If you do decide to make use of this on your own one day, be sure not to set any of the Gondians free until the actual timed event triggers, or else they'll bug out and not attempt to escape at all. You can kill all the enemies and pre-position up to 3 of your characters though, which makes it a very simple task to save everyone inside compared to the normal event. Alright, let's unsubscribe from Iron Throne Facts, subscribe to my channel, and get back to the failsafes. This last type of backup is a favorite topic of mine for the game, the usage of failsafe NPCs to replace others when you have killed a key character. In another video of mine, I'd previously covered how Roa Moonglow has a backup NPC who appears in Act 3 if she was killed in an earlier act, a leader of the Zentream, Boss Friel. However, what I didn't realize back then is that Boss Friel has a backup of her own. During the encounter with Minsk, if Roa was already dead and Boss Friel is killed before her escape, then inside the guild hideout a second backup Zentream character will appear named Trinoda. Normally with Roa or Friel you'll have a chance to join the Zentream in a battle against the guild, but with Trinoda you're forced into combat immediately against the Zents. But I mean honestly, can you blame her? If she's here that means you've already killed off 2 high-ranking members of the Zentream. There's no special loot on her, but I did find it cool that this character had evaded even myself for so long. Another backup character, which is nearly indistinguishable from the first, appears if you have slain the doppelganger who gives you the instructions for the Unholy Assassin questline. Since both characters are doppelgangers, they have the exact same name, stats, spoken lines, and appearance, with the only difference between them being the voice itself during the dialogue.
The approach unique, the form sloppy.
Approach unique, form sloppy.
There's only one backup character for this scenario though, which is a little sad considering they could have had unlimited copies of the same guy very easily explained. And lastly for this video, Sarevok himself has a few strange backup scenarios, but only if you're the Dark Urge and chose to side with Ball. If you've made that choice, then Sarevok normally appears in the endgame to provide you with a powerful buff that aids during the battle against the Netherbrain. Should the player have also killed Sarevok though, he has a backup character, Unholy Assassin Reich. Reich will act in Sarevok's place so that you're still given the buff promised by Ball if you'd been a little bit of a murder hobo along the way. But as you probably expected by now, Reich is not just some random nobody of an NPC. He regularly resides in the Ball Temple where you battle against Orin. He's a little special though because he's not hostile like most of the places while you fight Orin, he's just a bystander. If, however, he is also slain, then there is an additional backup. Unholy Assassin Mitchia. She too resides in the Ball Temple and is non-hostile, but exists on the far opposite end of the temple to increase the likelihood that one of these two survive being accidentally killed off. Now I already know what you're wondering about what happens if Sarevok and these two are dead, because the quest does mention that Ball will still support you in the final battle, but upon arrival to the Upper City, there is no third backup character to give you said boon. I guess this means that even the Lord of Murder himself has his limit when it comes to supporting the slaughter of his own followers. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video on 5 of Baldur's Gate 3's most obscure failsafes. Did you happen to know all of these? If you learned anything new, consider leaving a like on the video. And if you've enjoyed this type of content, then I recommend you to check out my other video, where I showcase Baldur's Gate 3's secret world-saving fish. Big thanks to all of you for watching my videos, and special thanks to my channel members for their additional support. Until next time, Proxy out.
And I want to make sure that we keep on investing heavily in things that maybe 0.001% of the audience will see.